Okay, picking back up, we reach my favorite part, coffee. Yes. Now, this is something that is mind-boggling but true. Before the Enlightenment, people drank an incredible amount of alcohol each day. So we're counting beer, wine, and spirits would be hard liquor. Right? The average person drank between 1 and 3 gallons. That's right, gallons. Imagine, the milk gallon. You have to drink three of those each day. A lot of people go, what in the world? The reason being, right, so people say, why did people drink so much before the Enlightenment? Reason being is that the water would make you sick, right? There's no such thing as water treatment, right? So this is something, yeah. So what people would do is they drank alcohol so they wouldn't get diarrhea or, get poisoned from the water. And the thing about this is that alcohol is a depressant, right? Alcohol makes you depressed, makes you sleepy and groggy. So you can only imagine what it was like before the Enlightenment. I mean, you think back to the medieval period as well as the Renaissance. Man, these people must have just been walking around hammered from the time they got up to when they went to bed. Just all that drinking is just crazy. But during the Enlightenment, right, one of the things that they figured out is that if you heat water, right, if you boil it, guess what happens to all those microbes that are in the water? You kill them, right? And also during this time, coffee starts to spread throughout Europe. So coffee drinking replaced alcohol, which I love. I love coffee. Now, what's the big deal about this? Coffee is a stimulant. You want to be stimulated and not depressed as you go through life. So what happened is that coffee houses were the place to go. So people would go to coffee houses and literally for a penny or 2 pennies, right? Just 1 or 2 cents, you could go to a coffee house and you could get a little pot of coffee and drink coffee, and you would, listen to other people that were around you and you would engage them in conversations. So the coffee house was what people did. They would go there and drink coffee. They would get all, jacked up on caffeine and talk about things and exchange ideas. Students would come in from university and talk about their lesson, right? So if you weren't rich and you couldn't go to university, you could hang out in the coffee house and listen to the students and engage them in conversation when you were drinking coffee, right? So what's the big deal about this? Rational thinking continues. And if you remember that idea that we talked about with the cycle, the coil, right? Coffee's a major part of this. And there's been historians who have looked into this and they've reached the conclusion that if not for coffee and this exchange of ideas that happened in the coffee house, that the Enlightenment might not have been what it ended up being. Wow, I know. So that people today think, going to Starbucks and drinking coffee and talking is a new thing. No, not at all. Hundreds and hundreds of years ago, people would go drink coffee in the coffee house, engage in spirited conversations, exchange ideas. Love coffee. Time for history break. Okay, the picture here to the left, this is King Louis the 14th. During this time, the royals, you'll notice he's wearing, pantyhose, what we call pantyhose today, and high-heeled shoes. Yes, this is, if you ever watch movies where the people are dressed like this, the setting is during the Enlightenment. King Louis is the Sun King. He reigned in France for an incredible length of time during the Enlightenment. And he considered himself to be an absolute monarch. In other words, what he claimed was divine right, that he got his power from God. And he was considered God's vicar on earth. The court that King Louis had, King Louis the Sun King, it became incredibly, incredibly influential. And what he wore, the food that he ate, the books that he read, the music that he listened to, all of that, right? All of that set the tone, and then everybody else followed his lead. This is a time in history where people are doing what the royals do. More history break. In 1755, on All Saints' Day, which was a holy day of obligation in the Catholic Church, in other words, a holy day of obligation, you're supposed to go to church, even though it's not a Sunday. So it was All Saints' Day, and everybody was in church in Portugal, which was a Catholic country. And then Lisbon, which is a coastal city, there was an earthquake that triggered fires, right? Because during this time, there's no electricity, right? There's candles all over the place. So it triggered a fire, and then the earthquake also triggered a tsunami, right? A huge tidal wave. And the combination of these three different events, the earthquake, fire, and tsunami, destroyed 85% of the buildings, and up to 100,000 people died. I know, it's just mind-boggling to think about that. And this happened again in Lisbon, Portugal. Now, for many people during this time, that this happened on a holy day of obligation when everybody was in church, that a lot of people, they looked upon this natural event as, it caused them to question, right? If God is an all-loving, all-powerful creator, that why did God do this? Why did God allow this to happen? And so they viewed it as a sign that God is not entirely all good or all powerful. And that some people reached the conclusion that this idea that God's like this is false. So they ended up with the conclusion, the idea that God is imperfect. Wow, I know. So now we reach, on life's vast ocean, diversely we sail, reason the card, but passion the gale. And card here is the rudder on a ship. And of course, a gale is the wind that fuels the sail. During this time, during the Enlightenment, the conflict between reason and passion is a common theme. In other words, mind versus emotions. Which one do you follow? Do you follow your reason or do you follow your passions? What controls you, your mind or your emotions? People during this time viewed passion as the driving force, as the wind that fills the sails, but it must be steered and guided by reason. Also during this time, please note, individuality was not encouraged at this time. The emphasis was upon the social group or the community, and the individual had to subordinate him or herself to society. Perfect illustration of this idea that that you have to subordinate yourself. John F. Kennedy, famous quote, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." Right? Boom. That's the Enlightenment. That's what we see right there. So, again, hope everybody has soaked in some good background information on the Enlightenment. So until we speak again, be well, do good work, and keep in touch.